She called the cops and screamed, "He's stealing our water." But I was standing right on my own land. The sun was still rising over the dry fields when those flashing lights showed up. 2 officers stepped out, looking more confused than angry. I could see her behind them, holding her little clipboard like it was a weapon. Karen, president of the so-called HOA that didn't even legally exist out here. She had that fake smile that melts into pure hate the second no one's watching. I told the cops calmly, "This is my ranch. My grandfather dug the first well here in 1952. I'm just reopening it." But Karen jumped in, shouting about community rights and water restrictions. Her voice cracked every time she tried to sound official. She even waved some printed paper with the HOA logo that looked like it came straight out of word art. The officers looked at each other. One of them whispered, "Ma'am, this isn't a subdivision." But she wouldn't stop. She wanted to make it look like I was breaking the law, trespassing or something worse. I stayed quiet because arguing with her was useless. I just pointed at the boundary fence and said, "That marker right there? That's county land. Everything inside it belongs to me." Karen's face changed. Her smile twitched and I saw something behind her eyes, panic. Not because she was wrong, but because she was starting to realize she couldn't control this one. She muttered something under her breath about calling her lawyer, then walked off fast, heels digging into the dirt. The cops left without saying much, but I caught one of them looking back like he already knew this wasn't over. And he was right. Because later that night, when the drilling truck came to finish the well, I found tire tracks near the gate, and my water pump wires cut clean through. By morning, the air smelled like burnt wires and diesel. The drilling crew refused to work. They said someone from the HOA threatened to fine them if they touched the ground again. I laughed at first, thought they were joking. But then I saw it. An official-looking notice pinned to my gate. Bold letters reading "Cease and Desist. Unauthorized water activity." Signed by Community Regulation Officer Karen Whitmore. I tore it down, crumpled it in my fist. She had gone too far this time. My land had no HOA, never did. But the paper looked so real it could fool anyone who didn't know better. I called the county office, asked if they'd sent someone. They hadn't. The man on the phone sighed. "Sir, we've had complaints about that woman before, but unless you catch her in the act, it's your word against hers." That hit me like a punch. She was playing dirty and winning. I decided to set up my cameras that night. Motion sensors hidden in fence posts, one by the well rig. My old military gear came in handy. She didn't know who she was messing with. By midnight, the cameras pinged my phone, headlights creeping up the dirt road. A white SUV stopped by my gate. Karen stepped out, flashlight in hand, whispering to 2 men I didn't recognize. They moved fast. One snipped the rest of my power line, the other poured something near the pump. My screen caught everything, every second. I stayed quiet, watching from the barn with my dog beside me. I could have stepped out right then. But I wanted proof. I wanted her to dig her own hole. When they left, I walked to the gate, the smell of gasoline thick in the air. She'd planned to burn my rig, probably frame it as an accident. I looked down at the dirt and whispered, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Because what Karen didn't know was that I wasn't just some rancher. I was a retired sheriff. By dawn, I'd already driven into town with a flash drive full of footage. The sheriff's office still had a few of my old buddies working there, though most of them hadn't seen me since I retired. Deputy Cole was behind the desk, same nervous kid I trained years ago. When he saw the video, his smile vanished. "That's Karen Whitmore, right? She's been calling here every week reporting you for illegal water use." I nodded slowly. "She's not just calling, Cole, she's cutting lines and trespassing." "And those men with her?" "I want IDs. He promised to run the plates." I left the footage with him and headed home. The drive back was quiet, but something felt off. A truck followed me for a few miles, too close to be random. When I pulled into my gate, it kept going. But I caught a glimpse of the same HOA sticker Karen had on her SUV. The next day, I woke to the sound of engines again. But this time, it wasn't cops. It was a tow truck. Karen stood beside it, arms crossed, sunglasses reflecting the morning light like she owned the world. "You can't have unregistered equipment here," she said, smirking. "HOA policy." I laughed, actually laughed. "Karen, this is private property. That policy of yours isn't worth the ink you printed it with." She didn't flinch. "You'll see what happens when you mess with the board." The driver hesitated, looking between us, but she flashed some fake permit, and he started lifting my drilling rig. I stepped forward, calm as ever. You touch that rig again, you're impounding federal equipment. She froze. Federal? I reached into my truck, pulled out my old badge, still valid under state jurisdiction. Retired sheriff. That means I know exactly how many laws you just broke. Her lips trembled for the first time. She took a step back, whispering, You can't do this. Oh, I can, I said, snapping a picture of her in the tow truck with the permit in her hand. And now you're officially under investigation for impersonating an officer and attempted property damage. She drove off, wheels spinning dust into the air. But I could see it in her mirror. She wasn't done. Not even close, because a few hours later, my phone buzzed again, this time from Deputy Cole. His voice was tense. Those men with Karen? One of them used to work for the county water division. The other, ex-contractor for the city supply line. That's when it hit me. Karen wasn't just harassing me. She was stealing county water and blaming it on me. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the windmill sounded like a truck door closing. By morning, I had a plan. I drove back to town and met Cole behind the diner where we used to grab coffee during night shifts. He slid a file across the table, printouts of emails between Karen and the ex-contractor. My name was all over them. She'd filed complaints saying I'd tapped into community water lines, trying to pin her own theft on me. Cole lowered his voice. She's funneling water from the county line into her cattle farm. You were just the distraction. I stared out the window for a long moment, watching dust swirl over the road. Then we let her finish the job, I said. We catch her doing it. That night I killed my porch lights and parked the truck near the tree line. Cameras rolling, rifle locked away, just me, the crickets, and the faint hum of her pump somewhere past the fence. Around midnight, her SUV pulled up again, headlights off. The two men unloaded pipes, connecting a hidden hose straight into the county valve buried by my well. They didn't see the blinking red light on my camera. I waited until they were knee-deep in mud, then stepped out, flashlight in hand. Evening, gentlemen, I said quietly. Karen froze like she'd seen a ghost. She tried to smile. You're trespassing on HOA property. Funny, I said, pointing at the hose. Because that line you're stealing from belongs to the state. And this land. I kicked the dirt near my boot. Still mine. She turned to run, but a cruiser's siren sliced through the night. Cole and two deputies pulled in fast, lights flashing red across her shocked face. One deputy read her rights while the other cuffed her men. I handed over the footage drive, and for a second, everything went quiet except for the sound of water still dripping from that hose. Karen glared at me, eyes burning. You think this is over? You don't know who I am. I smiled just a little. No, Karen, you don't know who I am. But even as they drove her away, something didn't sit right. Cole called out from the cruiser, We'll process her tonight. Yet hours later, when I checked the county site, her name wasn't in the booking records. By sunrise, the world looked calm again. But it was the kind of calm that hides a storm. My gate hung half open, dust from the sheriff's cruisers still floating in the air. I made coffee and sat on the porch trying to convince myself it was over. But the uneasy quiet kept gnawing at me. Then I heard the sound of an engine, a smooth, low hum, too clean for a county truck. A black SUV rolled up, tinted windows, government plates. A tall man in a gray suit stepped out, flashing a badge that looked different. Mr. Raines? He asked, his tone polite but sharp. I'm Agent Latham. We need to ask a few questions about your property. I leaned back in my chair. If this is about Karen Whitmore, I've already given my statement. He nodded slowly. That's the thing, Mrs. Whitmore works for us. Indirectly. Something cold slid down my spine. Us, he smirked. Department of Land and Resource Compliance. She's been operating under a temporary authority to monitor illegal wells. I stood up. She cut my wires, trespassed, and nearly burned my rig. You call that monitoring? He didn't flinch. You have footage, yes? We'll need to collect that. I could feel it. This wasn't about the footage. They weren't here for justice. They were here to bury it. I crossed my arms. Not without a warrant. He gave a short laugh. You still think this is your land, don't you? That line hit like a gut punch. I stepped closer. You got a piece of paper saying otherwise? He didn't answer. Just gave me a business card with no phone number, only a seal. You should leave the well alone. For your own good. When he left, I went inside, locked the door, and pulled out the old deed my grandfather left me. His name, my father's, and mine. 3 generations right there in ink. I checked the county website again, but the file was gone. Vanished like it never existed. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A woman's voice whispered, "They're not done, Mark. Karen didn't work alone. Don't trust the sheriff's office." Then the line went dead. I just stood there, staring out at the dry land beyond the window. If they wanted a fight for ownership, they were about to get one, because the next move was mine. That night, the ranch didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like enemy ground. I could see distant headlights pausing by the road every few hours. No one got out, but I knew they were watching. I spent the evening digging through old boxes in the attic until I found what I was looking for. My grandfather's land file, the original one. Hand-signed, stamped by the county in 1952. Real paper, real ink, the kind of thing no online system could erase. By morning, I was back in town, walking straight into the courthouse with that file in my hand. The clerk looked up, startled. "Sir, we already told you your property record isn't in our database." I slid the yellowed document across the counter. "Then explain this." She froze. After a few seconds, she whispered, This shouldn't exist." She typed something fast, frowning. "According to the system, your parcel's been transferred to the Crescent Lake HOA Authority. That's not even a registered entity." "Karen again?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, it's bigger. Whoever filed this used a federal override code." I left without another word, the old file tucked inside my jacket. Outside, a truck door slammed. I turned and saw him. Agent Latham leaning against his SUV, calm as ever. "Persistent man," he said. "I warned you to stay out of this." I took a slow step forward. "You erased my deed." He smiled faintly. "We reassigned it. There's a difference." Behind him, another car pulled up. A white SUV. Karen stepped out, smug again, like she'd already won. "You see, Mark," she said sweetly. "You can't fight the system. You're standing on government land now." I stared at her, then at Latham. "You both made one mistake." Karen tilted her head. "And what's that?" I pulled a small remote from my pocket and pressed play. Her voice filled the air, recorded from the night she tried to burn my rig. Every word clear as day. Latham's face drained of color. "Because I don't just record trespassers," I said softly. "I record everything." For the first time, Karen didn't have a comeback. She just looked at Latham, eyes wide with panic. And that's when 2 black SUVs turned the corner, this time with real county seals on the doors. The 2 county SUVs stopped hard on the gravel, lights flashing but sirens off. Cole stepped out first, flanked by 2 state investigators I'd never seen before. He walked up slow, his hand resting on his belt, not the friendly kind of stance anymore. "Mark," he said carefully. "Put the remote down." I frowned. "Cole, what's going on?" "You saw the footage. She's been stealing county water." Karen's voice cut through the air. "He's the one tampering with federal property." "He's lying to you, officer." Cole didn't even look at her. "We reviewed the footage," he said, eyes still on me. "There's more than one version." "What?" He nodded toward the agents. "The file you gave us was altered. Half the timestamps don't match. Someone spliced the data. I felt the air leave my lungs. I didn't touch it." "You know me better than that." But Karen's smile was back, wider than ever. "Told you he's desperate. Probably forged those deeds too." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the original document, holding it high. "This is ink on paper, Cole." My grandfather's signature. "You think I faked a document older than both of us?" Cole hesitated. Then one of the investigators spoke up. "We already ran it. The paper's authentic." He turned toward Latham. "But this man here, he's not with any government agency." Everyone froze. Cole's hand went to his holster. "What did you just say?" The investigator held up a badge recovered from Latham's SUV. "Fake. He's been posing as a federal agent. We've had complaints from 3 other counties, same scam. Works with locals to seize land, funnel water contracts, and sell rights under a dummy HOA." Karen's mouth dropped. "Wait, what?" "You said..." Latham shoved her hard and ran for the car, but I was faster. 1 step, 2, and I slammed the door shut before he could get in. Cole tackled him from behind. The man hit the ground hard, gravel scraping across his face. Karen backed away, trembling now. "I didn't know," she whispered. "He told me it was legal." I stared at her. "You didn't care if it was legal. You just wanted control." The real agents cuffed Latham, read his rights. Karen stood there shaking. Mascara streaked, finally realizing the cameras were all still recording. Cole looked at me and said quietly, "Guess you got your land back, Mark." I nodded. Yeah, but this wasn't just about land anymore, because deep down I knew the damage went further than one ranch. They'd been stealing from people like me for years, and I wasn't done until every inch of that fraud was exposed. The morning after the arrests, the air over the ranch felt different, cleaner somehow. The hum of the windmill was steady again. No engines in the distance, no fake notices pinned to my gate. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe, but it wasn't over yet. I'd promised myself I'd make sure no one else went through what I did. 3 days later, I was standing in front of the county courthouse with reporters crowding around. Cole had sent everything, Karen's forged papers, the fake HOA files, and Latham's fake badge, to the state attorney. They'd uncovered a whole string of illegal land seizures tied to Crescent Lake HOA, stretching across 3 counties. My footage was the missing piece. Karen showed up escorted by deputies, her once perfect hair a mess, hands shaking as cameras flashed. She tried to keep her chin up, but the crowd wasn't on her side anymore. Someone shouted, "How does it feel to get arrested for faking an HOA?" The look on her face said it all, rage mixed with shame. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. My family worked this land for 70 years. I fought for this country to keep people like them from taking what's ours. Turns out sometimes the fight comes home. The crowd clapped, but I wasn't looking for applause. I was looking at the flag fluttering above the courthouse, sunlight hitting it just right. Freedom didn't always come from wars overseas. Sometimes it came from standing your ground right where you live. A week later, I drove out past the ridge where my new well finally ran clear. The sound of water spilling into the trough was calm, steady, alive. My dog barked at the wind like it was finally safe again. Karen and Latham both took plea deals. She got community service. He got years behind bars. And the fake HOA? Dissolved. Every rancher they targeted got their land back. I leaned against the fence post, looking out over the dirt that held every memory my family ever made. "Guess we're free again, old man," I said quietly, picturing my grandfather by the old well. The sun dipped low, turning everything gold. I took one last sip of coffee, smiled, and said the line I'd waited weeks to say. I didn't dig that well to steal water. I dug it to remind them who really owns this land. The water kept running, and for once nobody tried to stop it.